Hello there.
Hello.
Who are you again? I forgot.
I'm Eugene Kovalev. No relation to the host. This is the first time I'm meeting him.
I'm Michael Kovalev, by the way.
Yeah. I've never seen this person before in my life. I had no idea there was somebody in Westboro
Oh, really?
with the same last name as me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he like lives at my parents' address. It's
That's
weird.
very weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know how he got there. Just woke up one day and I was just like.
I mean, for me, I did just wake up one day and suddenly you were there. And,
Yeah. Okay.
awful.
So, why are you here again?
I'm here because I was told you needed somebody to talk to.
Fair. What else? Anything else?
I guess so. Primarily, I'm here to talk about cybersecurity and like how and staying safe online.
That's nice.
And just for reference, currently I work as a software engineer at Datadog, but before that I worked at Akamai, and before that I went to school at UConn, where I was a co-founding member of the Cybersecurity Club. I worked at the Voting Technology Research Center, which is an organization tasked by the state of Connecticut to provide cybersecurity for elections. Amongst many other things, we would like hack voting machines and then provide procedures to the state to prevent those hacks from taking place in real world environments. Nobody should think of me as a cybersecurity professional, but I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast.
Gotcha.
That's a
And
good
you
way
went to
of
school in
putting it.
Westboro.
Yep, I went to school in Westboro.
Yep.
Actually, my wife also went to school in Westboro. That's where we met. But now I live not far away in Wayland.
Yep.
But those are kind of my cybersecurity credentials. I went to hacking competitions, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast, and I'm here to talk about privacy and security on the web.
That's great. I must say.
Yeah. So, do you have any specific questions, or should I just kind of start?
Just start. We'll
Just
see as it
start?
goes. Yeah.
All right. Well, so one of the things that I personally find kind of interesting about popular discourse about cybersecurity is that there's a prevailing thread of, I'm not sure if this is the right term, but it's a term, like cybersecurity nihilism, right?
Nihilism.
Yeah, nihilism, again, it may not be entirely correct. Nihilism overall is the ideology of, like, I don't believe in anything, I don't care about anything. And that's not quite how I mean it. I mean it more like people just seem kind of defeated, right? They just kind of give up on cybersecurity. They're like, I can't attain cybersecurity. I can't be secure anyway, so I'm just not going to bother with it. And that's what I'm referring to when I say cybersecurity nihilism. I think there's a lot of messaging from other cybersecurity enthusiasts and news sources on the subject that that inadvertently encourage this point of view, right? Because every time you look at the news about cybersecurity, you see this the next big breach, or you see, another big corporation getting away with like buying or selling people's data with just a slap on the wrist. And all of this kind of leads to a conclusion that, there's nothing I can do about it. I might as well just give up and like move on with my life. And at the same time, you have people like me who, cybersecurity enthusiasts, who go around kind of obsessing about unlikely and exotic hacks, and they're like, oh man, this hack that like 5 people got hit with in some like authoritarian country, I'm gonna go set up this, like, I'm gonna go work for a week, set up this crazy security system on my home computer just to prevent this one like crazy hack that will never realistically
You mean
happen.
protecting your email with government level of security?
Something like that, but like even more extreme than that,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I think this leads to a lot of like, oh man, it's so hard to attain even basic cybersecurity. I'm not even going to try. And I'm here to say that impression is false. right? I think some people are creating this impression on purpose, some people are creating it by accident, but this impression is false. Cybersecurity, like decent security online, is attainable for everyone. It has become orders of magnitude easier in the past few years, and with just a few really simple steps, you can get to like 80-90% there.
80, 90?
80%, 90%.
No, I
like
get that. I get that.
A very high percent, a very
Really?
high percentage of the way to like meaningful, lasting security online. And the first step to that is understanding that all cybersecurity is relative. It's relative to something that security professionals refer to as a threat model.
Yeah.
Before you can define yourself as secure or insecure from a cybersecurity perspective, you have to have an understanding of the kinds of threats that you realistically face,
Yeah.
the kinds of threats you care about, and of course the kinds of threats that, and exclude the kinds of threats that are completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
Right? There are certain governments out there that are extremely powerful, and if they direct all of their resources to hacking you, there's very little that you can do.
Well, yeah,
But that's true of like the locks on your house, right?
yeah.
Like if there's some crazy group of people out there with tanks and they want to knock down the door to your house, they're going to knock down the door to your house.
Yeah.
In fact, locks, like the kinds
Yeah.
that most of us have on our doors, are extremely insecure, right? There's that channel on YouTube, Lock Picking Lawyer.
Yeah.
Every lock he's managed to pick,
Yeah.
right? But people still put locks on their doors, right?
Yeah. They do.
Because there aren't that many lock-picking lawyers out there. So it's very important to think of cybersecurity on the web in terms of like, what are you actually trying to protect against? And I'm not here to tell anyone what their threat model should be. I'm not here to tell anybody that they need to protect against this, but not that. Everyone needs to decide for themselves what their threat model is. For many people, it's as basic as, hey, I don't want anybody to be able to hack into my bank account.
Fair.
I don't want anybody reading my like really private messages on my phone.
Fair.
And nobody should be able to like steal money from me. And that is a perfectly reasonable threat model.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems reasonable.
There are others. There are more extreme threat models, right? If you are a journalist in a really, really repressive country, you're going to have a very different threat model, right? You're going to want to use Tor to completely anonymize all your traffic. You may want to have a dedicated laptop that only accesses the internet through Tor in order to do what you do.
Tor is what? I'm sorry.
Tor it's kind of like a VPN online. The difference is that unlike a VPN, Tor provides certain guarantees of anonymity online. So it's not just that your traffic is encrypted.
Yeah.
It is also anonymous. It should, if you're using Tor correctly, which is an important caveat, but if you're using Tor correctly, it should be difficult or nearly impossible to prove who, like, the traffic, given internet traffic, is associated with. So you want to use Tor for everything, and you got to continue your important work, but your threat model is fundamentally different. In fact, you may care a lot less about somebody hacking into your bank account than you would about someone being able to access your journalism research.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first step to proper cybersecurity is defining your threat model, defining what you care about.
Yeah.
And then from there, making reasonable cybersecurity choices.
Yeah.
Another example of this is AirTags.
Really?
Right? AirTags have proven really useful to some people and extremely dangerous to others.
Well, yeah, because you can stalk people with AirTags, but on the other
Yeah.
side, they are very good trackers because so
Yeah.
many Apple devices.
So, for example, in my case,
Yeah.
I use AirTags to keep track of my cats
Yep.
because I am more worried about my cat being lost
Yeah.
than I am about someone spying on me using those AirTags.
Fair.
So that's kind of a mini threat model right there, right? I think I'm like, okay, hypothetically somebody could use, these AirTags to spy on me, but realistically,
Yeah.
it's much more likely that I'm going to lose a cat.
Wait, do you have them on your keys?
No.
So, do you have something that they're with you always?
Well, yeah. So, for example, when I take my cat to the vet,
Except
the
that
the
cat
AirTag,
isn't always with you.
the
Your
cat
keys
is not
are.
always with me, but someone can spy on me.
Fair. They can find out where you live, but they can't find out. It's more dangerous to find out your direct location.
Right, and hypothetically, they could figure that out. But the bigger threat is that I lose my cat.
Fair.
So this is a mini example, right? I use AirTags.
Also, lose your cat is like it goes outside, not like you actually lose your cat in your house. It's not that.
Yeah. Like
just
the
wanted to
cat goes
clarify
outside, that. Yeah. So I think it's very important to kind of have a good grasp of what you care about.
Yeah.
And what you don't care about. And that's different for every person out there.
Yeah.
So whenever you see an article, it's like, oh, there's this crazy malware out there that's like targeting like really specific people. Don't get discouraged, right? If it's not part of your threat model, if protecting yourself from the government of North Korea is not part of your threat model, then don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Worry about the stuff that's part of your threat model that is a realistic challenge for you. So any questions so far?
No, not yet.
Okay. So I think a reasonable question to ask at this point would be, well, okay, fine. We get it, right? You're not like pushing any. You're not. There's no one size fits all. But what are some suggestions that really are extremely general that are close?
So, like, what should a
size?
person do to stay cyber secure?
What are some like really bare bones basics that get us a huge part of the way there? So I would say number one. And it's number one, like way ahead of everybody else, right? This is the Michael Phelps of cybersecurity suggestions. No one else even comes close. Password managers. Use a password manager.
Like Bitwarden.
Bitwarden, like 1Password. Honestly, use a notebook. A notebook is a perfectly cromulent password manager.
But a notebook doesn't have a password on it that you have to type in.
Sure, but a notebook is also not permanently online.
That's fair.
And it cannot be hacked unless somebody gets physical access to it. Whereas, so again, define your threat model. Are you more worried about somebody in your house stealing your passwords from your notebook? In that case, use 1Password, use Bitwarden. Or are you worried about someone hacking into an online password manager?
But you can also say that, for example, Bitwarden. I use Bitwarden. I'm trying. You have a master password, and it stores passwords, and those passwords can be randomized, so it's way more convenient. You don't have to open a notebook every time. You can just put an extension into your browser.
You're right, but again, I'm just saying, depending on your threat model, a notebook is a perfectly cromulent password manager, right? If the threat model includes, like, let's say you are someone who's extremely forgetful.
Yeah.
If the threat model includes you losing the password to your password manager, well then
use a notebook.
The only thing I have to put in here is, for the love of God, don't use LastPass. LastPass is not a password manager.
What is it?
It's like it's a program that pretends to be a password manager, but in the past 10 years there hasn't been a single year that there wasn't a major breach of LastPass.
Yeah.
Do not use LastPass. Holy cow. Do not use LastPass. 1Password, Bitwarden, Pass.
Can you talk about how they're open source and how they won't just steal your passwords or breach them? Well, breach them maybe, but not steal them and log into all your bank accounts or whatever.
Right. So, it's actually very hard to guarantee that.
Yeah.
The advantage of using open source software, but this I want to stress this is on the extreme end.
Yeah.
All of these companies have a profit incentive not to steal your passwords.
Yeah.
Because all of their profits come from providing a security service. If people no longer believe that they're providing a security service, they will go out of business.
Yeah.
So that's really what keeps your passwords safe.
Yeah.
But if you want to go one step further, if you have a more advanced threat model,
Yeah.
Bitwarden, the clients are open source, and you can self-host your own Bitwarden instance called Vault Warden.
Oh, self-host? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And when you self-host Bitwarden, you actually have guarantees that you can see for yourself in the database that the passwords are being encrypted, that the owner of the server, that is you, cannot use those cannot see those passwords.
Yep.
So you have guarantees to yourself. But this is very advanced. I'm not trying to, I'm not saying don't self-host. I self-host lots of stuff. I'm saying, what you do for cybersecurity should be proportionate to your threat model. Don't worry about self-hosting your own password manager if there's no realistic threat that a password manager that you need to account for that self-hosting would help with. And I want to stress there's a lot of threats where self-hosting isn't going to protect you. Self-hosting may in fact make you more vulnerable.
Yep.
Because when it comes to Bitwarden or 1Password or all those other online cloud password managers, they do not, they have a security department. You are not a security department, right? Let them do what they're good at, and pay them money for it. The reason you shouldn't pay LastPass is because they're not good at it. Anyway, sorry, I've got issues with LastPass.
Did you use it?
No, but a lot of people at the cybersecurity club did when the first breaches started coming around. So after a while, we got this motto, if you're still using LastPass, please don't. So LastPass is not a password manager. It doesn't count. But all those other ones, they are very secure. They have a extremely short history of breaches. So I'm not trying to say that these password managers would never, ever, ever get breached. But when they have been breached, it's been rare, it's been limited, and it's been and their response to it was perfect.
And do you personally use Bitwarden?
I personally use Bitwarden.
Okay. And you self-host with Vault?
I have different domains of my life where I do different things, and in some cases I self-host. But the primary instance where most of my personal passwords live, that is not self-hosted. I pay Bitwarden $12 a year or something.
Okay.
Because that gives me the ability to share passwords with my wife, which is very important.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think the most important thing that people can do for their cybersecurity online is use a password manager. And the reason that you'd want to use a password manager is because password managers allow you to generate unique passwords for every single service that you use. And
still be easy to put into.
And still be easy to put in, right? So it's that wonderful, wonderful sweet spot where it's more secure and it's easier. And that's really rare. Cybersecurity tends to be hard. But with a password manager, you hit the sweet spot where it is easier and it is more secure. And one of the big reasons that it's more secure is that it cuts down on password reuse. Because without a password manager, everyone reuses passwords.
Because it's just easy.
It's
just easier to remember.
Yeah. There's not a single person out there in the whole world who doesn't use a password manager of some kind and doesn't reuse passwords. It's not
That's
possible.
pretty fair, I must say.
Yeah. So that's and again, I want to stress password managers are not perfect. I mentioned, password managers have breaches. That's okay, right? It doesn't mean that you can't attain 80, 90% good enough cybersecurity for your threat model. And definitely don't fall into the trap of just because, like, if it can't be 100%, I'm not going to bother with it, right? Because guess what? The locks on your doors right now, they're not 100%. They're not even close. But nobody leaves their doors unlocked, right? Nobody just leaves their doors hanging out, like, without a lock at all. Another way I heard somebody describe it is, there's people out there who say, oh, I don't care about my privacy, but they still close the door when they go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So close the door when you go to the bathroom, right? So I think that's, if you take anything away from this discussion, which isn't really a discussion, I'm just kind of ranting.
Yeah.
The number one is don't fall into the security nihilism thing. Like if it can't be 100%, it's not worth it. Number two, think about your threat model.
Yeah.
And number three, use a password manager. So what are some other examples of so any questions up to this point?
No, I just say stuff.
Yeah, I just say stuff too. So what are some other examples of, like, things that are nearly universally true in terms of improving cybersecurity, except for password managers?
Yeah.
I want to stress, password managers, by far the most important universal security suggestion. But another good example is, use encryption by default wherever it's available, right? A bunch of websites over the past 10 years have switched to HTTPS by default. You notice the red, the green lock on most websites, and it's red when it's just HTTP and it's not encrypted, and that's a good thing.
Did you hear there's no green lock? There's no lock on Chrome now.
Yeah, so now HTTPS is default.
Yeah.
But if you go to HTTP, it'll be red.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. That's fine. So this is good, right? It makes encryption the default, and that's very important. Whenever you have a choice between an encrypted service and a non-encrypted service, all other things being equal, always pick the encrypted service, right? Again, I'm not telling you what services to use. I'm not, I'm not trying to say that security is more important than other needs that you may have that are met by these services. But if you have a choice between two services, everything else being equal, pick the encrypted one. And then the third example that I have for, like, stuff that works for nearly everyone is you want to minimize your attack surface. And that's kind of industry jargon. Attack surface is like, it's the points where in your personal cyberspace connections where attacks may occur. Right? So every single account you have, every single app you have installed on your phone, every single website you go to is in some sense part of your attack surface. Yeah. So what I mean when I say minimize your attack surface is, if there are applications you haven't been using for a long time, uninstall them. Don't bother, right? It's kind of like cleaning your room.
Yeah.
I know you've never cleaned your room, so it's a difficult kind of,
I get it.
Difficult metaphor for you, but just trust me on this, right?
Okay, I'm trusting. I trust you.
But essentially, any apps you're not using, delete them. Any websites where you have an account where you're not using them anymore, delete your account, close it down. And especially if you know you're never going to use it again, just shut it down. There's a lot of benefit and very little risk. And there's an obvious question that comes up. It's like, well, it's hard to keep track of all the websites that I'm no longer using. Well, you know what makes that really easy? A password manager.
Oh, because you put all your account
password manager Many password managers will tell you the last time you use a password, so you can even see what websites and what web apps you haven't used for a long time. So I think those are some like universal cybersecurity suggestions for your own personal privacy. Use a password manager to reduce password reuse. Use encryption by default wherever available.
And that goes to messaging services as well.
Everything. And minimizing your attack surfaces. Right? So if you're not using something, delete it, log out. It can't hurt you. So any questions so far on that front?
No, just at the end, remind me, I pulled up the page about some messaging stuff at the end.
Okay, sure.
Just remind me at the end.
Sure. Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned before, security doesn't need to be 100%. 80%, 90% is really easy to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Using a password manager gets you most of the way there. It's more like a door lock. It's important to have a lock on your door than that be just like the best lock in the world, one that is guaranteed secure, because at some point somebody's just going to break down the wall if they care enough. So, threat model. And I think, why is it important to say this? Why is it important to tell people, hey, even small steps towards cybersecurity matter a lot? It's important because there's a lot of people out there who stand to benefit from people giving up on their privacy and their cybersecurity. There's a lot of people who buy and sell information and who make a business of selling your information. And
my information.
Yeah, your information personally, but also all the viewers. And it is very much in their interest that you kind of give up about cybersecurity, that you just feel defeated, feel like you have no choice, and then they can keep doing what they're doing without being interrupted by pesky court cases and whatnot. And that's really dangerous, because one of the things a lot of people don't realize about the data that they put out there onto the internet is that it's not just going to be subjected to all the algorithms that exist today. It's going to be subjected to all the algorithms that will ever exist. And I think that's a really important insight, right? You're not just protecting against whatever's out there today, right? Let's say you are someone who cares about your data not being used to train AI models. I'm not saying you should care about that. I'm just saying, there are definitely people who don't want to be part of that. And let's say you're one of those people. Well, sure, those things exist today, but imagine what will exist tomorrow and the day after. And all the data that you put out there onto the internet, it will be subjected to those algorithms of the future that will be far more powerful and may be able to tell things about you that seem inconceivable today. So when I say minimize your attack surface, you should really think about limiting the data that you put out there onto the internet. Again, you have to consider all of this in the context of your own personal threat model. You have to consider that there are benefits that you gain from putting stuff about yourself online. For example, I was recently looking for work. Yeah, I put stuff on my LinkedIn because it's more important that I find a job, especially, I had a kid on the way. It's much more important that I find a job than it is that I prevent some crazy AI company from scraping LinkedIn and using my job history to train their models.
Or something worse, but okay.
It could potentially be something worse, but the reality is that I need a job more then I need to be protected from something worse.
That seems fair, yeah.
Right? Because let's say some algorithm comes out that can use all the data on my LinkedIn to steal all my money. Well, there ain't going to be any money to steal if I don't have a job. So, again, everything should be viewed in context. I'm not here to be like this crazy paranoid stereotype of a security geek. I'm here to illustrate that all you really need to do is make educated, informed choices about what you're doing online.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who want you to just give up and just let it all go, right? And that's what I think people shouldn't give up on. It is easy to make educated, informed, reasonable choices. It is easy to use a password manager. It is easy to uninstall apps that you don't use. And it is easy to think twice before putting something online.
Seems fair enough.
So, yeah, I think that's a important insight, and it's certainly not my insight, but it's important to remember that any data that you put out there onto the internet, it's not there just for today's algorithms. It's there for all the algorithms of the future. There's a very good book that's not about cybersecurity by Martin Kleppman called Designing Data-Intensive Applications. And that book is something I use a lot in my own professional life. I have a copy at work. I have a copy at home. And a lot of my friends, they start reading that book, and they get like a really long way into it, and then they kind of drop off towards the end. And a lot of them don't read the last chapter. And the last chapter is really important because in the last chapter, the author, who spends a lot of time talking about how to build applications like Twitter that are very data intensive, the author takes a step back and he says, look, we thought a lot about how to build these applications, but what we haven't thought about is, should we be holding on to all of this data? And he raises a number of really good points, and that's where this insight is from, right? That the data will be subject to all the algorithms of the future.
Yeah.
Why is this so important? Well, all data that is on the internet, one of two things will happen to it. Guaranteed. One, and this is the good one, it will be lost. Data is routinely lost on the internet. The problem is it's rarely data anyone cares about, almost by definition. The second option is that it's going to fall into the hands of people who have no responsibility to you, right? When you click the accept button on all those websites you sign up for, where you sign the end user license agreement and you like sign away your firstborn child or whatever, those people actually have, like, because you signed that agreement with them, they actually have like a legal responsibility to meet certain basic requirements about securing your data.
Yeah.
They owe you something. Now, that something may be completely inappropriate. It may be way too weak a guarantee, but nonetheless, they owe you something in return for your data. But
is it like what social media was before a couple of years ago, where you wouldn't pay for it, you would pay with your data, and now you have to pay for some of it and pay with your data as well?
Maybe. Again, it depends on the specific example, but in general, right, if you have a company that you signed an end-user license agreement, they could hypothetically promise in that end-user license agreement, to keep your data private.
Yeah.
And they outline the conditions under which that data is handed out to third parties. And they obligate themselves to respect those conditions. And if they violate those conditions, you can, in fact, take them to court. Now, again, there's a lot of commentary about how effective this is, right? I'm not here to tell you that these guarantees are ironclad. Companies get away with doing bad things with this stuff all the time. But nonetheless, there is some minimal responsibility that they have to you. But if the data is not lost, the data will fall into the hands of someone who has no responsibility to you. Those are the two options. Either data is lost, or the data will fall into the hands of people who have no responsibility to you.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? Well, if data is not lost, it can either be hacked, so hackers can steal it. Those hackers have no responsibility to you. They've signed no legal agreement. They're operating outside the law, and they're going to do whatever they want with that data until the police are good enough to arrest them, to catch them and arrest them. But the other option that a lot of people don't think about is corporate vultures.
Yeah.
Right? So, someday, 100 years from now, 5 years from now, Google will go bankrupt. I'm not going to tell you when that's going to happen.
Because you don't know. No, because you know. Oh, because you don't know. Right?
But what I will say is that it's guaranteed to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Someday, Google will cease to be an entity. And when that happens, a lot of Google's assets will be sold. They will be carved out and sold. When a company, is liquidated, people will go through and they'll take all the office chairs and sell them on eBay.
Yeah.
But they'll also go through and they'll sell all the data.
Really?
Yeah.
And Google has basically the most data out of anything.
So there will be a bidding process, and people will just buy that data, and those people have no meaningful responsibility to you that can be enforced. So no matter what, all data that you put online will either be lost or
sold.
It will be hacked or it will be sold.
Those
are the only three meaningful options. I guess instead of hacked, we could use the more expansive term stolen. So you should really minimize as much as possible the amount of data that you put out there. I want to stress, I pick my words carefully. Minimize is not the same as go live in a shack in Montana, right? Even though I do occasionally have urges, but I need my internet connectivity. You don't need to lock yourself away from the modern world. There are huge benefits that companies like Google, Facebook, social media, etc., present to users. If people wouldn't use them if they didn't present these huge benefits. But you should always minimize the amount of information you give them, because in a way, that maximizes the services that you receive in return for the data. It maximizes your value proposition.
Yeah.
The less data you give them, because you all receive the same services, so the less data you give them, the more you benefit and the less you give up. It's kind of like getting a deal on eBay for a used corporate office chair. So any questions about that?
No, not really. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I like to think it's because I'm being fairly clear and articulate, but who knows? I may be just ranting, and in reality, I've lost whatever audience I had. So aside from, I do want to take a little aside from that, and I want to talk about, most of this discussion has been, what can you do, right? Like, what is your responsibility? How can you stay safe online? And I want to take a moment and I want to talk about something that, honestly, it feels like victim blaming. That's what it feels like at this point, because it's gotten a little ridiculous. There's, people occasionally fall for scams.
Yeah.
Right? We've all received those spammy text messages like, hey, click this link. There's a package waiting for you. You got to pay like $10 and then we'll send you the package. And, there's very common advice out there for avoiding scams. Hey, don't just click random links, right?
Especially shorten links.
Shorten URLs. Don't do that, right? Who knows, right? Who knows? And definitely, like, if you click a link, and the link takes you to like install an app, holy cow, do not install that app, right?
Unless you specifically click that link.
No. Like, if you clicked a shortened link and the link tries to install an app, holy cow, do not install that app, right?
Yeah.
That's like common knowledge. And yet, people fall for these scams all the time. And when they do fall for them, there's a lot of victim blaming. There's a lot of people who go, oh, well, everybody knows not to click on that link, right? Just like I said right now. Holy cow, why would you click on that link? Mm-hmm. But a lot of that ignores what legitimate communication from certain corporations and enterprises and organizations looks like. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. These corporations, they output a lot of educational materials, like how not to get scammed. And the reason they do that is because it's very cheap and easy to put out those materials. It's much more difficult to spend money to actually improve your messaging technology to be secure. Mm-hmm. So what I want to show you is a text
screen
message.
Record that?
So I have a screenshot. Can I send you a screenshot?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I want to show
It'll just go on screen.
This is a text message that I received recently. Mm-hmm. So, first off, there is no one in my contacts named SMS no reply at Verizon.com. There's no such person in my contacts. And yet, there's no phone number. It shows up as SMS no reply.
Is that on just messages?
This is just a text message. This is SMS. Mm-hmm. Next, weird formatting. It says no subject / your Verizon bill is now available. Please watch a quick personalized video about your bill, and it gives me a shortened URL with my account ID in it. Mm-hmm. And the URL, did you notice that the URL is HTTP, not HTTPS?
Oh, no, I did not.
Yeah. So how many red flags does that tick off? Let's think. So it's using some exotic element of the SMS protocol to not show the phone number and show a contact name, which I don't have.
Also, was that your account number or the account number of our family member?
I don't actually know.
You don't know? But you blocked it out?
Yeah. Okay, I blocked it out, and I promptly forgot about it.
That's fine.
So it's using some exotic element of the SMS protocol. So that's red flag number one. It's using an unencrypted, unsigned, unverified protocol to send sensitive information. Yeah. Like the account ID. SMS is basically unencrypted. Yeah. It uses very weak encryption. It's using a shortened URL. Mm-hmm. It's using HTTP instead of HTTPS. And, best of all, I actually clicked on that link in a secure environment. You know what that link does?
What?
It takes you to download an Android app.
Yes. Like start download immediately?
Yes.
Damn.
How many red flags is that? By my count, that is 5 red flags. Should you click on that link? Is that spam or is that a legitimate communication?
Aiden, what do you think? Should that link be clicked?
Yeah, definitely click the link. Especially because it says no subject / at the top. Oh,
good answer.
Okay, so is that our final answer? Are we going to click on the link? No, we don't want to click on the link. Yeah, it's spam, right?
Yeah.
It's illegitimate. So here's the deal. I investigated. It's real. That is a real communication from Verizon. The app that it tries to download is a real Verizon application. This is a real corporate communication from Verizon. I'm not exaggerating. This is legit. This happened to me. This is legit.
Damn.
What? And Verizon is one of the companies that outputs tons of materials online, like do not click on scammy links.
Yeah.
This is as scammy as it looks. I guarantee you this ticks off at least 6 red flags on the Verizon checklist for things you shouldn't click.
Yeah.
And they sent this out. This is a 100% legitimate Verizon communication. I am not kidding. This actually happened to me. So, ask yourself, who's really at fault here?
I don't know. I
right?
don't know anymore.
Who's really at fault for clicking that link? Verizon is sending out these crazy, and I want to stress, it's not just Verizon, right? I have tons of other examples of bad stuff like this.
Yeah.
Right? There are banks that do this. Dick's Sporting Goods store has these absurdly weird encrypted URLs in their marketing materials.
So whose fault is it?
So they put out really inconsistent communication. On the one hand, they tell you, hey, pay attention to all these red flags. On the other hand, in order to use their services effectively, you have to just trust that this came from Verizon and disregard their advice. That education, all those educational materials that they put out on scam prevention is completely meaningless when the corporate communication materials that they put out themselves disregard standards for good, secure communication. And as a result, condition their clients to just click the link.
Yeah.
So when you see typically an elderly person just click the link and get scammed, buddy, it ain't their fault. It's the fault of all the companies that have conditioned them to just click the link with their own basic insecure communication practices. And blaming the person who clicked the link is borderline victim blaming. I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, it's definitively victim blaming, or no, it's not. But it's definitely borderline, right? Victim blaming is a complicated subject. I'm not an expert on the subject. But I feel comfortable in saying that with communication like this, it's borderline. It's borderline victim blaming to blame some person who's just clicking the link when they get regular communication from their internet service provider.
At SMS under dash no reply. Whatever.
No subject / your Verizon bill. So that's the last thing I really want to bring to people's attention. I think that's patently absurd. I think it really undermines a lot of what would otherwise be very effective cybersecurity messaging.
Yeah.
And I think people need to be aware of it, and I think that companies need to do a better job. Not just companies, organizations of all sorts need to do a better job at their regular corporate messaging.
Yeah.
Right? In order to make sure that they are not sending mixed signals about good cybersecurity practices that are important to their business, right? Verizon, it hurts Verizon when somebody steals money from their customers.
Well, yeah.
It hurts a bank when somebody steals money from their customers. Cybersecurity is in these to these organizations' benefit. And they should really do better, right?
Yeah.
It's not the fault of some, person who just clicked the link. It's the fault of the people who communicate with them inconsistently, in my opinion.
I agree. I must say.
So, any questions about that?
No, I don't think that was very clear.
Okay.
I just have something. This was a couple days ago or weeks. Apple ended up saying something that iMessage is the best and most secure messaging service out there. So, what do you think about that? And that's the chart they released. Do you understand anything on that?
Yeah, so I do.
Okay.
I do understand. Basically, what they're describing here is that they're layering regular cryptography with what is referred to as post-quantum cryptography. Now, quantum computing is very much a hypothetical area of computer science.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's nobody's really demonstrated practical quantum computing yet. It's kind of confined to laboratories. Yes, there's certain things quantum computers can do, and there's the possibility that governments have more advanced functionality than what's publicly available. But fundamentally, so far as we know, quantum computing is still theoretical, but quantum computing poses a serious threat to cryptography today. And cryptography is used everywhere to secure messages. HTTPS. That's what the S stands for. It's HTTP secure, and it uses TLS cryptography, which is fundamentally very advanced. So quantum computers, it's very important to get ahead of these threats to cryptography, because one of the things that's listed here in this diagram is harvest now, decrypt later. So hypothetically, an entity could collect encrypted messages today, wait for quantum computers to catch up, and then decrypt those messages later. So by putting in post-quantum cryptography today, we essentially gain resistance against that, because if somebody starts gathering messages today, well, they're post-quantum encrypted, so even if they get a quantum computer 20 years from now, they're still going to be up a creek. But there's a few things to keep in mind about this. Firstly, I started out by saying that quantum computers are still theoretical. When it comes to technology, the devil is often in the details. And while something is theoretical, the way that quantum well, okay, it's not theoretical, but while something is at the research and development stage, we don't know the details yet. And the details, we might have guessed right. And the post-quantum cryptography algorithms that we're using, they might be the right thing. Certainly a lot of experts are like, yeah, this is the right thing. But there's always a small chance that we've guessed wrong. And that all this post-quantum cryptography will be useless anyway. Or we will have possibly guessed wrong the other way. Namely that quantum computers aren't actually that useful for decryption, and the basic algorithms that we use today are fine. However, none of this should really speak ill of Apple in this particular scenario, because in this particular scenario, Apple is doing the best that they can, right? They took the best possible post-quantum security, post-quantum cryptography, and they're like, look, if this doesn't work, we don't have anything better. And if quantum computers aren't, they don't deliver, well, that's fine. We're still secure, right? So there's a strong upside and a very, very limited downside, because the only downside to this is, whatchamacallit, the only meaningful downside to this is a slight decrease in performance. I don't think it's significant. I don't think anybody's noticed that it takes a few microseconds longer to encrypt or a few nanoseconds longer to encrypt their iMessage messages. So fundamentally, this is pretty good. I hope to see more companies adopt a similar approach where, they have to look out for upcoming threats and, take a better safe than sorry approach. I wouldn't say that Apple is the best.
I was about to ask about that, because that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Apple is the best about this, partly because, so like they call out like, oh man, we're better than Signal, right? Signal is actually a specific thing they call out.
They call out multiple specific things on the other side, but
right, but they call out Signal as like the second best to iMessage. I think that there's an aspect here that they are not representing accurately, namely that Apple. So Signal, in my opinion, is the most secure means of communication available to us mere mortals for some definition of security. And it's very important that there is a threat model for which this is true, and there may be threat models for which this is false. I guarantee you there exists a threat model where smoke signals are more secure than the Signal Messenger app.
Okay.
But anyway, for most of us mere mortals, I would say Signal is the most secure means of communication. Now, why do I disagree that Apple is fundamentally better? Apple may have this new post-quantum cryptography thing.
I don't think they came out yet, but that's just an announcement.
So, sure. So just to be clear, they call out, like, Signal is not completely unawares when it comes to post-quantum cryptography. They have their own post-quantum cryptography defenses. The thing with Signal is that Signal is open source. iMessage is not. iMessage goes out of their way to portray themselves as open source, and they open source the cryptography piece of iMessage.
Yeah.
But not all of iMessage is open source. Only the cryptography bits.
Yeah.
All of Signal is open source. We know what the whole Signal app does.
Yes.
By looking at the code. Nerds like me look at the code. And then we can check that the version of the code that we're running on our phone matches the code that we saw through a process called hashing. We can't do that with iMessage.
Yeah.
With iMessage, we have to trust that the open source code that Apple puts out is what they use. And we have to, because iMessage is not open source, we have to trust, we can't verify. Trust but verify.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Trust but verify, everybody associates that phrase with Reagan. But trust by verify is a Russian phrase.
Really?
Доверяй, но проверяй. Which somebody told Reagan, he really liked it, and he popularized it in the U.S. But anyway, with Signal, we can trust and verify.
Yeah.
With Apple, we have to trust that this is what they're actually doing. We have to trust that nothing else in iOS, in iMessage, is messing with that, which it could, even by accident, not even on purpose, just by accident. And we have to trust that the code that they're open sourcing is the code they're actually using, which we can't verify either.
Yeah.
And I think that trust is a huge, huge component. I think Apple can go a long way to... They can easily become better than Signal if they just open source all of iMessage.
But they won't do that.
I don't know. Maybe they will.
Well, considering what happened with Beeper last year.
I'm not here to comment on corporate policy. I don't know what Apple is thinking. I do not work at Apple. I have a few friends that work at Apple, but they don't work on this.
Yeah.
I would not want to opine on anything where I am not, authoritative.
That's fair.
I can only say that the way for Apple to indisputably be better than Signal in this graph is to open source all of iMessage and allow people to validate themselves cryptographically that the version of iMessage that they are running on their phone is the version of the code that they read.
What about the other apps on the diagram?
Well, so those other apps, I guess, what about them? There's nothing inaccurate about what is being displayed here, right? QQ, Skype, Telegram are not end-to-end encrypted by default.
Yep. Is Telegram?
No, Telegram is not end-to-end encrypted by default.
I didn't know that.
Telegram has a pretty serious problem, which is that Telegram, for their end-to-end encryption, they have a roll-your-own algorithm.
Yeah.
Which roll your own cryptography. The one thing you're not supposed to do in cryptography is you're not supposed to roll your own cryptography. And like they have this thing where like, hey, if anybody can break our algorithm, we'll give you this big award, and nobody has managed to claim that award. But it's really easy to set really arbitrary guidelines for how such an algorithm should be broken, and that's kind of what they did. And as a result, nobody's really been able to break it according to their definition. But the reality is that Telegram uses an unverified algorithm.
Yeah.
Whereas Signal, the authors of Signal, created a really important cryptography library that underpins all of those other end-to-end by default encrypted applications. This is what WhatsApp uses. This is what Signal uses, and this is what iMessage used to use. I think it's called liblm. And the algorithms in question, I don't remember, are called Ratchet to set up end-to-end encryption. But anyway, Telegram doesn't use those open source, well-verified, well-understood cryptographic algorithms. They use their own weird thing, even when they are end-to-end encrypted, and they're not end-to-end encrypted by default. And that's kind of a red flag. We should be careful about that.
But don't you still use Telegram In WhatsApp?
I still use Telegram. I still use WhatsApp. And this goes all the way back to what I said about threat models.
Yeah.
Right? It's really important to understand like what I use those things for.
Yeah.
And what the threat models are. I overwhelmingly use WhatsApp as a way of communicating with certain relatives for whom WhatsApp is convenient. And the bigger threat is that if I convince them to use something else, I won't be able to communicate with them at all.
Yeah.
So you have to...
Wait, how about Telegram then? WhatsApp I get, but...
it's a very similar story with Telegram.
Mm-hmm.
The difference with Telegram is, I do use it to communicate with a lot of my friends. That's what a lot of my friends use. But Telegram, it's very user-friendly. It's easy to manage large groups. And again, the counter threat is that without something like Telegram, like Signal isn't very user-friendly. iMessage is only on iOS. And most of my friends don't use iOS.
Mm-hmm.
So Telegram kind of comes out to be the next best thing because WhatsApp has a problem. Now, you would think like, hey, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted by default. Like, doesn't that make it better than Telegram with its, home-baked encryption? Unfortunately, WhatsApp has a problem.
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. Specifically, WhatsApp has, they definitely use like libelm and all this end-to-end encrypted stuff. But there's been several publications detailing how Facebook can still retrieve data from the WhatsApp app.
Yeah. Essentially
through a side channel. So like, yeah, sure, your communication's encrypted, but Facebook can just like retrieve the messages if they want to. From the client-side app itself and just send it to Facebook. So, okay, great. They use end-to-end encryption by default, but they also routinely bypass it, so who cares? Right? And this is kind of what I meant about iMessage.
Yeah.
Like, they can use all the best cryptography ever.
But it's not on.
But if iMessage just does something really insecure with the data inside of iMessage, you can't check that.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not telling you to not use WhatsApp.
Yeah.
I use WhatsApp. I'm merely saying that I prefer Telegram to WhatsApp because...
And Signal to Telegram.
And I prefer Signal to Telegram in terms of security.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of user-friendliness, I prefer Telegram. The reason I prefer Telegram to WhatsApp is, A, I find Telegram personally to be more user-friendly. And B, I find that Telegram has never lied to me. Right? Like, I am aware of the weird roll-your-own encryption thing with Telegram, but... They tell me what algorithm they use,
right? Don't lie.
They're not lying to me. They tell me here's the algorithm, here's the open source implementation of it. Have fun, buddy. It's out there, and they're not lying to me by surreptitiously collecting data to the best of our knowledge. That might change tomorrow, and you'll see me migrate to something else or make different choices. But fundamentally, that's why I prefer Telegram to WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I prefer Signal to WhatsApp. Now, again, iMessage, I'm very happy that Apple is taking post-quantum cryptography seriously.
Yeah.
But I think that the way for them to be truly superior to Signal is make it so that we don't have to just trust them. Make all of iMessage open source.
Yep.
And that will, and then, we'll know that it's superior to Signal. And then, maybe that will convince me to switch to iPhone.
Okay. Well, is that it?
That's all I had on that one. Do you have any other questions?
I know. Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.